Hello and welcome to your July 18th daily briefing. Getting right into it, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin yesterday hinted at some potential big changes to the Paycheck Protection Program. And I think you're really going to like these ideas if you're either a small business owner, a self-employed individual, or a contractor. And before I get started, if you wouldn't mind hitting a like on this video, I would be so very appreciative if you did. For some reason, YouTube doesn't promote my business videos nearly as much as my other videos, and leaving a like would help show YouTube, hey, we got some quality content over here. All right, let's get into it. Just for some context here, Congress approved the Paycheck Protection Program as part of the CARES Act back in March. The popularity of that program then depleted all of its initial funds within an extremely short period. This prompted Congress to sign a bill adding more funds to the program in order to make sure all small businesses who wanted to apply could receive funding. So far, over $500 billion in small business forgivable paycheck protection loans have been funded. This still leaves a staggering $130 billion in funding still remaining in this program, sitting there, available to fund new small business loans. One of the most popular ideas is to reallocate this funding to allow the smallest and the hardest hit small businesses to obtain another paycheck protection loan after their initial funding runs out. Secretary Mnuchin seems to be behind this idea. He told the House Business Committee that Congress should allow the hardest hit businesses to apply and receive a second loan. And here is a direct quote from Mnuchin on this topic. So he said, next phase relief should extend the Paycheck Protection Program, but on a more targeted basis for smaller companies and those that are especially hard hit, such as restaurants, hotels, and other travel and hospitality businesses. And then he later clarified that on the eligibility end, it should cover all businesses that have had significant revenue declines rather than just targeting specific industries. He was just citing some industries that were especially hard hit. Mnuchin also expressed his support for Michael Bennett and Todd Young's proposal to allow businesses that have seen their revenues decline by at least 25% to apply for 6 months worth of operating costs and payroll as a second Paycheck Protection forgivable loan. And then this proposal is slightly different from Senator Ben Cardin's plan to extend the Paycheck Protection Program for a second round to the smallest of businesses. It's very similar, slightly different. His plan was called the Prioritized Paycheck Protection Program. I talked about it a couple times on this channel. The key differences under the Prioritized Paycheck Protection Program are the deadline to apply for a forgivable loan under this second program would be extended to December 31st. The Prioritized Paycheck Protection Program would only allow businesses with fewer than 100 employees to reapply, and the businesses who are reapplying must show a decline in revenues of at least 50% versus the 25%. So looking at these two ideas, of course, the first one stands out as the obvious choice for small business owners as far as how much small business owners would benefit. It'd be more inclusive because you would only have to certify that revenues are down 25% versus 50% in the prioritized plan. And the first one I mentioned would offer much more funding for small businesses who do receive the loan. 6 months worth of payroll and operating expenses is huge. That's more than double the size of the first round of funding for the Paycheck Protection Program, which offered an 8-week funding runway. My biggest concern here, though, is hopefully we see a similar employee size limitation on Bennett and Young's proposal. If companies with up to 500 employees are able to reapply, there really is no chance for most small businesses to receive any of the remaining $130 billion in funding. Honestly, even 100 employees seems a bit high to me. Maybe the limit should be more like 50 employees or less to serve those smallest of small businesses that certify that revenues have gone down some significant portion. Another major concern with the Paycheck Protection Program is the complexity of receiving and applying for loan forgiveness. The original forgiveness application was a nightmare. Just for context, I have a 20+ minute video just explaining how the application works. I think it was 13 pages and you have to go back and forth doing calculations. It was crazy. And then about 3 weeks later, they updated the form to make it slightly more simple with an even easier version for those who didn't reduce payroll by more than 25%, but it's still complicated. It's really confusing still. So there's a lot of pressure to further simplify the application for businesses who received less than $150,000 in Paycheck Protection loan funding. Mnuchin seems to agree that some simplification is still in order. In fact, Mnuchin's opinion on the topic may actually surprise you. It sure surprised me. Kind of an unexpected turn. Here's what he had to say about the loan forgiveness portion. He said, "I know one of the things we'll talk about is, should we just have forgiveness for all small loans?" Mnuchin said. "I think that's something we should consider." Automatic forgiveness for small loans, I mean, that would be honestly amazing. I talk about and think about and dream about these topics literally every single day because I'm presenting on them every single day, and I'm still dreading the application for loan forgiveness for my own business. So I can only imagine how the average person might feel about this daunting task to hope for forgiveness and fill out this application. He later added that of course, we would still need to have some kind of fraud protection to ensure there isn't fraud on the forgiveness end. I mean, we can't just have more people trying to go and buy Rolexes and Rolls Royces with their business loans, or go to Vegas like that one guy with his $8.5 million. So this is all we have on this topic so far, but I'm sure we'll know more next week once the Senate is back in session, and I'll be excited to see what they decide to do on this program, and I'll make sure to keep all of you updated as far as the Paycheck Protection Program, if we can apply again, and loan forgiveness. Moving on from here, let's talk about the liability protections we may see in the next relief bill. For months, we have been hearing Mitch McConnell say the next package will absolutely contain liability protections for businesses, schools, churches, and other entities. To show how serious he is about this, here is what McConnell had to say about liability protections. This is a direct quote from him this week. "It must, no bill will pass the Senate without liability protection for everyone related to the coronavirus. Nobody should have to face an epidemic of lawsuits on the heels of the pandemic that we already have related to the coronavirus." So here's how the Senate's liability proposal is set to work. It will offer a 5-year liability shield that's backdated to December of 2019 through the 2024 year, or the official end of the Emergency Health Declaration by the Department of Health and Human Services, whichever date is later, so 2024 or that declaration. On its most simple level, businesses, colleges, schools, and churches would only be liable for injuries caused by the pandemic if they didn't make reasonable efforts to follow public health guidelines. I wasn't able to find exact examples of what a reasonable effort means, but we can assume things like practicing social distancing and like those plastic shields for workers, just basic precautions, is a pretty safe assumption. Basically, unless your entity is being negligent under this proposal, it'll be very hard to be held liable for any injuries due to the pandemic. This proposal has raised concerns on the Democratic side of the aisle. They are questioning if it would prevent workers from being able to sue over unsafe working conditions, and this is really where the nuances of law come into play. If something like this goes into effect, there will have to be a lot of defining as to what negligence means in those cases, and a lot of exceptions and examples, I can only assume. It seems like we'll likely see some form of increased protection. However, it's up in the air whether the House will agree to this level that the Senate is proposing. So that's all I have for today. Check out the link in my description for Webull. If you make an account and deposit $100, you'll receive 2 stocks completely free, and you'll be helping out this channel in the process. And the best part is, if you close your account, if you don't like the service, you can keep your $100 and you can keep the 2 free stocks. When I made an account, I got 2 free Levi stocks worth about $30. Took me 5 minutes to do. It's a pretty good deal. Anyways, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.